there, friends. Welcome to Lotus Light Teachings. Let me ask you something. Have you ever held on to pain for so long that it felt like part of who you are? Maybe someone hurt you, said something that cut deep, betrayed your trust, or left you feeling unseen and unvalued. And even though time has passed, the pain still lingers, replaying in your mind like an old song you wish you could turn off. But what if you could let it go? What if you could free yourself from that weight and finally find peace? In today's video, we're diving into the Buddhist path to healing, how to overcome hurt and find inner peace. We'll explore why we hold on to pain, how to release it, and the powerful ways mindfulness and compassion can help us heal. So take a deep breath. You're in a safe space. Let's begin. You know that feeling when you touch a hot stove? Your instinct is to pull your hand away. It hurts too much to hold on. But when it comes to emotional pain, we often do the exact opposite. We hold on. We replay the moment. We analyze every detail. We carry it with us, sometimes for years. Why? Because deep down, we believe holding onto the pain protects us. We think it keeps us from getting hurt again. But in reality, it just keeps us trapped. Buddhism teaches that suffering isn't just about what happens to us. It's about how we react. The good news? We have the power to change our relationship with pain. In this journey, we'll explore why we experience emotional pain in the first place, how to break free from resentment and negative emotions, simple Buddhist techniques to heal and find real inner peace. By the end of this video, you won't just understand how to heal. You'll have the tools to actually start letting go. So let's get into it. The nature of suffering, understanding the source of pain. There's a moment in life when we all ask ourselves, why does this hurt so much? Maybe it's after a heartbreak, a betrayal, or the loss of something we thought would always be there. It's in those moments, when pain feels unbearable, that we start searching for answers. I remember talking to a friend who had just gone through a painful breakup. She was the kind of person who always had everything together. Career on track, social life thriving, heart full of dreams. But this shattered her. "I don't get it," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Why does it hurt so much? Why can't I just move on?" The truth is, pain is woven into the fabric of our existence. Buddhism calls it dukkha, the suffering that touches every human life in one form or another. No one escapes it. Not the rich, not the famous, not even the most enlightened souls who have ever walked this earth. But here's the thing. While suffering is inevitable, how we respond to it is within our control. I've always been fascinated by the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, not because they are philosophical concepts, but because they reflect what we all experience in our daily lives. 1. Suffering exists. Pain, whether emotional, physical, or mental, is a part of being human. We lose people we love, we get disappointed, we struggle with self-doubt. There's no avoiding it. 2. Suffering has a cause. More often than not, our suffering doesn't come from the event itself, but from our attachment to how we think things should be. We expect love to last forever. We expect life to be fair. We expect people to be who we want them to be. And when reality doesn't match our expectations, we suffer. 3. Suffering can end. The good news? Pain doesn't have to last forever. When we learn to release our attachments, to let go of expectations and accept life as it is rather than how we want it to be, we find peace. 4. There's a path to freedom, the Noble Eightfold Path. Mindfulness, right action, right speech, right effort, gives us a way out. It teaches us how to navigate life with wisdom, kindness, and resilience. Sounds simple, but I know firsthand how hard it is to put into practice. A few years ago, I lost someone I loved dearly. It wasn't a sudden loss. It was one of those slow, inevitable endings where you see it coming, but it still knocks the air out of you when it happens. I held on to the pain for a long time, replaying memories, wishing things had turned out differently. And then one day, I heard a simple story that changed everything. A Buddhist monk once received a beautiful cup as a gift. He admired it, used it every day, and enjoyed its presence in his life. But he also reminded himself, this cup is already broken, not because he expected to drop it the next day, but because he understood that everything in life is temporary. One day, the inevitable happened. The cup slipped from his hands and shattered into pieces. But instead of feeling anger, sadness, or regret, he simply accepted it. After all, he had already made peace with its impermanence. When I first heard this story, I'll be honest, I didn't fully get it. How could accepting loss before it happens make it hurt any less? But the more I sat with it, the more I realized how much of my pain came from resistance. I had been holding onto a story of how things should have been, instead of accepting how they actually were. The truth is, everything in life is already broken. Relationships, opportunities, even our own bodies. Not in a depressing, fatalistic way, but in the sense that everything is always changing. The moment we embrace that, we stop clinging. We stop fearing loss. We start living with gratitude for what we have while we have it. It's not easy. Letting go never is. But when we stop trying to hold on to things that were never meant to stay forever, we free ourselves. Think about someone like Steve Jobs. At the peak of his success, he was diagnosed with cancer. A stark reminder that no amount of wealth, fame, or brilliance can shield us from impermanence. And yet, in his final years, he spoke often about appreciating the present moment, about focusing on what truly matters. He understood, in a way that so many of us struggle to, that life itself is like that fragile cup. Precious, beautiful, and one day gone. So what do we do with this knowledge? We start by practicing presence, by appreciating people while they're here instead of regretting their absence later, by loving fully, even when we know that love, like everything else, is temporary, by holding everything, our successes, our relationships, our possessions, with open hands rather than clenched fists. I think about my friend and her heartbreak. At first, she resisted every part of it. She wanted to erase the memories, to undo the pain, to go back to the way things were. But slowly, she started to see it differently. She stopped asking why it hurt so much and started asking what it was teaching her. That's the shift. That's where healing begins. Pain doesn't mean something has gone wrong. It doesn't mean life is unfair. It means you're alive, that you loved deeply, that you dared to care. And that's a beautiful thing. So the next time you find yourself clinging to a person, a moment, an expectation, pause. Remind yourself, this cup is already broken. And then, instead of resisting life's impermanence, embrace it. Because once you do, you'll realize something incredible. You were never meant to hold on. You were meant to let go and be free. There was a time in my life when I thought pain was something to be conquered, something I could push away if I just tried hard enough. But the more I resisted it, the more it clung to me, like a shadow I couldn't escape. It wasn't until I stopped fighting, until I sat with my pain, looked it in the eye, and allowed myself to feel it fully, that I understood something profound. Healing isn't about erasing pain. It's about transforming it. We all carry wounds. Some are fresh, still raw to the touch. Others are old scars that no one can see, but we know they're there. Maybe it's heartbreak. Maybe it's disappointment. Maybe it's the loss of someone we loved so deeply that the world still feels empty without them. Whatever form our suffering takes, we all have one thing in common. We want to heal. We want to move forward. But how? Buddhism offers a path. Not as a quick fix, not as a way to avoid pain, but as a way to walk through it with grace and wisdom. And the first step is learning to simply be present with it. I remember the first time I truly understood mindfulness. I was sitting in a tiny cafe, heartbroken over the end of a relationship I thought would last forever. My mind was a storm, replaying conversations, overanalyzing words, drowning in the what-ifs. Then, I noticed an elderly man sitting at the table next to me. He wasn't doing anything special, just drinking his coffee, watching the world pass by. But there was something about him, a stillness, a quiet presence that felt so foreign to me in that moment of chaos. And then it hit me. I was everywhere except here. My body was in that cafe, but my mind was stuck in the past, in a story I couldn't change. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a moment, and let go of the past just long enough to notice the warmth of my cup, the hum of conversation around me. the simple fact that I was alive. That was my first taste of mindfulness. Mindfulness is deceptively simple. It's the act of paying attention to your breath, your thoughts, the sensations in your body, without trying to change or judge them. It's learning to sit with pain rather than run from it. The next time you feel overwhelmed, try this. Find a quiet place. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in, then out. When a painful thought arises, don't push it away. Instead, acknowledge it. I see you, pain. And then, gently return your focus to your breath. At first, this might feel impossible. But little by little, you create space between your pain and your reaction to it. And in that space, healing begins. But mindfulness alone isn't enough. If we want to truly heal, we have to shift how we see our pain. And that starts with compassion. We live in a world that tells us to be strong, to fight back, to never let anyone hurt us. But Buddhism teaches something radically different. Compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. Because the truth is, people hurt others because they themselves are hurting. There's a story about the Dalai Lama that I love. When asked about the Chinese government, the people who had taken his homeland, exiled him, and caused so much suffering, he didn't respond with anger. Instead, he said, "They too are suffering." That level of compassion feels almost impossible, doesn't it? But the more I sit with it, the more I realize. Holding on to anger only deepens our suffering. It's like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer. There's a Buddhist practice called metta, or loving-kindness meditation, that has changed my life in ways I never expected. It goes like this. First, you close your eyes and say to yourself, "May I be happy. May I be free from suffering." Then, you extend that wish to someone you love. May they be happy. May they be free from suffering. And then, and this is the hard part, you extend it to someone who has hurt you. The first time I tried this, I couldn't do it. I felt ridiculous, like I was betraying myself by offering kindness to someone who had caused me pain. But the more I practiced, the more I realized. This wasn't about them. It was about me. It was about releasing the bitterness that was weighing me down. When we let go of anger, we don't erase what happened. We don't excuse the hurt, but we do free ourselves from carrying it. And that freedom, that's healing. But sometimes the hardest thing to let go of isn't anger. It's the story we tell ourselves about our pain. We all do it. They shouldn't have treated me that way. This isn't fair. I don't deserve this. We replay the moment over and over, adding layers of resentment, of self-pity, of regret. But here's the thing. Pain is real, but the story we attach to it, that's optional. I once heard a Buddhist teacher say, imagine holding a burning rope. The longer you hold on, the more it burns you. But the moment you let go, the pain starts to heal. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means releasing the need to relive it, to carry it, to let it define you. Think of someone like Nelson Mandela, a man who spent 27 years in prison, who had every reason to be bitter, to seek revenge. But what did he choose? Forgiveness, peace, freedom. He once said, "As I walked out the door toward my freedom, I knew that if I did not leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I would still be in prison." I think about those words often. Pain is unavoidable, but suffering, that's optional. So if you're carrying something heavy today, heartache, resentment, a past you can't seem to escape, I want to remind you, you don't have to hold on to it forever. You can breathe, you can soften, you can choose peace. The next time pain arises, try this. Pause, take a deep breath. Instead of resisting it, ask yourself, what is this teaching me? Instead of feeding the story, remind yourself, this too will pass. And then, let go. Not all at once, not perfectly, but little by little. Because healing isn't a destination, it's a practice. And every single moment you have the choice to begin again. There's a moment in life when we all stand at a crossroads. When someone wrongs us, when anger rises in our chest, when every instinct tells us to fight back. In those moments, we make a choice. We can let anger consume us, let it dictate our next move, let it shape the story we tell ourselves. Or we can take a step back, breathe, and choose a different path. I used to think karma was about fairness, about life keeping a perfect score. If someone hurt me, I'd comfort myself with the thought that karma will get them back. If I worked hard, I expected karma to reward me. But the more I lived, the more I realized that karma isn't some cosmic punishment or reward system. It's cause and effect. It's about what we put into the world and how that energy shapes our future. I remember a time when I let anger take control. Someone I trusted deeply betrayed me, and I spent months, years even, carrying that resentment like a stone in my chest. I replayed the betrayal over and over, fueled by the injustice of it. And yet, the more I held onto it, the more it consumed me. I wasn't punishing them, I was punishing myself. Then, I came across a story that changed the way I saw everything. One day, a man approached the Buddha, furious and full of hatred. Without a word, he spat on the Buddha. The disciples who witnessed it were outraged, ready to retaliate. But the Buddha, he simply wiped his face and smiled. Without a trace of anger, he walked away. The next day, the man, ashamed of his actions, returned and begged for forgiveness. The Buddha, still calm, replied, "Yesterday's man is no longer here, and neither is yesterday's anger." When I first heard this, I laughed bitterly. That's great for the Buddha, I thought, but I'm not enlightened. I'm human. Letting go of anger that easily? Impossible. But the more I sat with the story, the more I understood. The Buddha wasn't dismissing the man's actions. He wasn't saying the insult didn't happen. He was simply refusing to carry it forward. He had no interest in holding on to poison. And in that moment, I saw myself clearly. I had been carrying my own poison for years. The betrayal had happened once, but I had relived it thousands of times. Every time I thought about it, I was letting it hurt me again. That's the thing about anger. It feeds itself. When we react with bitterness, we create more suffering, not just for others, but for ourselves. The cycle never ends unless we choose to break it. Think about Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison for fighting against apartheid. Nearly 3 decades stolen from him. And yet, when he was released, he didn't seek revenge. He didn't hold on to hatred. Instead, he led a nation toward healing. As I walked out the door toward my freedom, I knew that if I did not leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I would still be in prison. That line stopped me in my tracks. Here was a man who had every right to be angry, every right to hate those who had taken his freedom. But he chose something different. He chose peace. He chose to move forward. That's what karma is about. It's not about getting even. It's about breaking the cycle. It's about choosing what kind of life we want to create. Not based on what's been done to us, but based on how we respond. I started asking myself a hard question. What am I putting into the world? Because if I carried anger, if I let resentment guide my actions, I was just adding more negativity into an already wounded world. And what good would that do? So I tried something radical. I let go. Not all at once. Not easily. But little by little, I started choosing kindness over resentment. Not for them, but for me. And the strangest thing happened. I felt lighter. The moment I stopped reliving my pain, the moment I stopped feeding my anger, it stopped owning me. It's not about being a saint. It's not about pretending that people's actions don't hurt us. It's about deciding what we do with that hurt. We can hold on to it, let it shape us, let it turn us into someone we don't want to be. Or we can breathe, acknowledge the pain, and choose to move forward with wisdom and grace. Life will test us. People will disappoint us. But in every single moment, we have a choice. And in that choice, we shape our future. So the next time someone wrongs you, pause, breathe, ask yourself, do I want to keep this pain alive? Or do I want to free myself? Because yesterday's anger, yesterday's pain, it doesn't have to be here today. There was a time in my life when I believed that forgiveness was something you gave to others, like a gift, a favor, an act of charity. If someone wronged me, the idea of forgiving them felt like letting them off the hook, as if their actions no longer mattered. Why should I forgive when they didn't even say sorry? I used to think, why should I let go when they're the ones who caused the pain? But over the years, I've come to see forgiveness differently. It's not about the other person. It's not about whether they deserve it or not. It's about us, about the weight we carry, about the stories we hold on to, about the walls we build inside our own hearts, keeping love and joy at a distance. I remember a conversation I once had with a close friend. She had been betrayed by someone she loved, and the pain had settled deep into her bones. Even years later, I could see it in her eyes. The anger, the hurt, the exhaustion of carrying something she didn't know how to put down. "I just can't forgive them," she said, shaking her head. "They don't deserve it." I asked her a simple question. If holding on to this pain hasn't made you feel better, what makes you think keeping it longer will? She went quiet, because the truth is, holding on to pain doesn't fix what happened. It doesn't rewrite the past. It only keeps us trapped. Nelson Mandela once said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." Those words hit me hard when I first read them. Because isn't that what we do? We think that by holding on to anger, by replaying the betrayal, by refusing to forgive, we are somehow protecting ourselves. But in reality, we are the ones suffering. We are the ones who stay imprisoned long after the moment has passed. I think about the story of Oprah Winfrey. As a child, she endured hardships that would break most people. Abuse, abandonment, deep wounds that could have hardened her heart forever. But instead of allowing her past to define her, she found healing in forgiveness. She chose to rise above, to create a life of love and impact. In an interview, she once said, "Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different." That line changed something in me, because isn't that what we're really holding on to? The hope that things could have gone differently, that they shouldn't have said what they did, that we should have been treated better, that life should have been fairer. But the past is unchangeable. No amount of anger or resentment will rewrite it. What is changeable, however, is how much space we allow that pain to take up in our lives. Forgiveness is not about erasing what happened. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about deciding that our peace is more important than our past, that our joy is more important than our grudges. I once heard a beautiful metaphor. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with rocks. Every resentment, every grudge, every unresolved pain is another stone inside that bag. Now imagine carrying it everywhere you go. To work, to dinner, to bed. It doesn't matter how strong you are, eventually, it will wear you down. Forgiveness is simply the act of setting the backpack down. Not for the sake of the person who hurt you, but for yourself. So how do we do it? How do we actually forgive when the pain feels so justified? First, we acknowledge the hurt. We don't ignore it, we don't push it down, we don't pretend it didn't happen. Because healing can't happen without honesty. It's okay to say, "This hurt me, this was unfair, this should not have happened." But we don't have to stay there. Then we try to see the other person's humanity. This is the hardest part, I know. But people don't hurt others from a place of wholeness. They hurt from their own wounds, their own brokenness, their own battles we may never understand. That doesn't excuse what they did, but it helps us understand that their actions were a reflection of them, not of our worth. Next, we make a choice, because forgiveness is not a feeling. It's a decision to let go, a decision to free ourselves. It won't happen overnight. Some wounds take time, but the simple act of choosing to release the pain, even just a little, is the beginning of true freedom. And then we fill the space, because when we let go of anger, we create room for something else. Peace, joy, love. Instead of focusing on what was taken from us, we can focus on what we still have. The people who love us, the moments that bring us happiness, the future that is still unwritten. I used to think forgiveness was for the weak. Now, I know it is one of the bravest things we can do. It is not about surrendering to those who hurt us. It is about reclaiming our own power. Think about it. If someone hurt you once, why let them keep hurting you every day after that? Why give them that power? Forgiveness is how we take that power back. So if you're holding on to something heavy today, a grudge, a resentment, a pain that you can't seem to shake, I want you to ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Is this worth my joy? Is this worth my freedom? And if the answer is no, maybe, just maybe, it's time to let it go. Not for them, for you. Healing isn't about pretending the pain never happened. It's not about saying, oh, it's fine, when it's not. It's about choosing to stop carrying the weight of the past. It's about freeing yourself. So, the next time you feel anger, resentment, or hurt rising up, try this. Pause. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, do I want to keep holding on to this pain, or do I want to let it go? Because the truth is, you don't have to stay stuck in the hurt. You have the power to choose peace. If this message spoke to you like this video, it helps spread this wisdom to others. Drop a comment. What's one insight that stood out to you today? And if you know someone who could use this, share it with them. Thank you for being here, for showing up for yourself, and for choosing healing. Until next time, stay mindful, stay compassionate, and keep walking the path to peace.